Well, welcome back to my living room. Now it's Wednesday night, and this is the Inside the Process Hour, where I not only play for you, I take a chance and open my mouth and try to say things as well, to just give you a little look into the process, whether you are a musician or not. I'm trying to do these so that it can speak to you wherever you are. You may get some conceptual ideas as a musician, or maybe learn something or have something presented in a new way. And if you are just a fan of music, you can kind of see what we go through to do this. So every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, in addition to the Escape from Home piano hour on Tuesday nights at 7. You'll see the support link to my website, to the page which allows you to choose between the PayPal tip jar and mailing address if you wanted to send me something, or I should define the something, right? Or the Patreon, which is essentially a tip jar link as well, but there are exclusive content benefits that you'll receive from me for doing this. So let's dive right in. I like to be at home, speaking of inside the process, when during the day when I have to do these streams, especially Tuesday night, because it's real vital for me to be in that space. And sometimes I'm like near the space, it's like the ball circling the cup, it knows where the cup is and it knows it doesn't want to go in. And that was me last night to some extent. I mean, it was okay, and I listened to it today, and some of it was kind of amusing. But for my own process, I need to cultivate that space so I can walk to the piano and have it open. I try to do that on Wednesdays as well, but it kind of gets all shot to Hades because I'm here trying to talk and use a different part of my brain as well. So I give myself a little more leeway. And this afternoon, because we have a live stream coming up on Friday night, which I will reshare the event again so you'll know about it, if you don't already, I was rehearsing with the Shires earlier today. I got home not that long ago, actually. We had a wonderful afternoon rehearsal. And the topic is the stage at school. Whenever you make music with anyone, you're going to learn something. You're going to be better off for having done it. So there's a starting point right there for this topic, which is the stage at school. And I'm going to share a few experiences that have been really important in terms of what they've taught me, both about making music and about myself. So let me go ahead and play a tune that we like to play with the Shires, and one we're going to play Friday night, if you don't mind hearing it twice. It's just a fun old tune. It'll give me a chance to center myself, or something. When I grow too old to dream, not exactly how we're going to play it with the Shires, but you know, every time I sit down on the piano, it's a new moment, right? So, if you've been around me for any length of time, especially seen me on stage, particularly at the mainstay where I had the opportunity the last 4 years because of my Monday night ongoing series to pick up the mic a lot, more than might be safe. But I'm on mic every week, and one thing you hear me say, or is that the best school for musicians is the stage. That's really where we learn. And like I said, I'm going to give a few of those experiences, but I want to first talk about, just briefly, music students, and I'll devote an entire hour to probably multiple pieces of this discussion. So when I say the stage is our school, I do not mean that it takes the place of practicing for a serious musician. Now this can be tricky because, you know, everyone's commitment to music is their own, and it's often dictated by circumstance. If you are somebody, let's say an adult student who takes piano lessons, but you have a demanding full-time job, you know, there's only so much you can do. And if you can play music and your schedule is super busy otherwise, and you really can't practice, a good way not to go backward and not to lose touch with what you're doing is get out there and perform. You know, do gigs. I hesitate to use the term weekend warrior because sometimes that's pejorative, but you know, we are in the positions that we are in. But if you are devoted to music, typically you're going to spend at least some time, or maybe a lot, practicing. And pretty much to a person, the musicians on the art side of things, you know, classical and jazz, who have really made their impression in music history, spent many hours a day, most of their lives, practicing. So we're not talking instead of that. Although there are some instances of professional musicians that's been the case. I understand that was the case with Buddy Rich, and maybe I'll talk about that if I have time. But that's certainly the exception, not the rule, and he was on the stage constantly from the time he was, I think, 3. So if you are a student of music at all, and doesn't matter how good you are or good people think you are, or even if you unfortunately fall in this category, how good you think you are, there is always room to practice and always room to grow. And when you're practicing, it's kind of like you're being prepared. You're preparing yourself for the stage. You know, because performance and practicing are 2 different things. So it's one thing to prepare yourself for the stage, but it's another thing to learn on the stage. What you learn on the stage is unique. Now, when you're a student of music, as an adult or a young person, a really vital piece of music is the opportunity to take part in the communication of music. Now, if you're someone who is completely content to play in your home, let's say you play piano, and you play for yourself, you don't want to play for people, and it's fulfilling, go for it. But I will say that interaction with music and then interacting with other people using music teaches you all sorts of things that you can't learn by yourself, and that just kind of goes without saying. And so for students, the idea of, let's say, piano recitals for young students, let's say a teacher would have, that provides that opportunity to be on the stage. And there are, of course, other ways to do that as well. But I'm going to move on, because I don't know if I can talk about all this. But we're going to start with an experience that I had when I believe I was 18 years old. And if you happen to see a video that I shared maybe yesterday or the day before, one of the last 2 days. And it was from 1978. I suspect it actually might have been 79. But Steve Bryan shared it, and his posts are public, so I can share them on my page as well. And I actually met Steve in this circumstance I'm going to talk about. But that was a band, kind of a pop band, that I was in. And, you know, the experiences that I had doing that were, of course, invaluable. But the reason I bring that up, and if you saw me, I'm like just a small part of myself back then. This is going to be that same time frame. So probably when that video was taken, I was doing this gig that I'm going to talk about. And the gig was, I did it for a year and a half. I would have done it a lot longer, but there were some difficult circumstances. Was being the house pianist accompanist for an amateur night. And boy, was that school. So a little bit of background as to how that happened. And, you know, things that happen organically are the best things. So I may have been 17 or just barely 18, or let's say I was 17, right? And the Mediri brothers and I, they're 2 years older than me, and I think I was still a senior in high school and they were in college. But if you know me and you know my story, Joe and Paul Mediri and I were friends since high school, and we formed our first musical group modeled after the Benny Goodman Trio, and we just immersed ourselves in all of that. And when you're teenagers in the 1970s, you know, you're definitely playing old music when you're playing the Benny Goodman stuff, but you're not playing, I mean, it's no more separated from the current time than, let's say, you know, Billy Joel and Elton John, kind of, or the Beatles. Somewhere there it is from now. So there's still some relevance there. And they got the idea to go to this amateur night that was in a club right near where they lived, and I live relatively near them. And it was kind of a big deal on Monday nights. It had been going on for a while. I paid no attention to it because I typically didn't go places unless I was playing there. But there was a pretty prominent Philadelphia celebrity that would come in and do the emceeing, and they would have acts to come in. They would be a panel of judges, and every 13 weeks they would pause, and then they would have 13 finalists, and then they'd have a final. So like 4 times a year there was this like grand quarter winner, right? So Joe and Paul wanted to go over. I said sure, and there was already a Fender Rhodes piano, which is what you were going to play on back then if you didn't have an acoustic, almost all the time. And we went in and we did some Benny Goodman thing. I think we probably did Runnin' Wild, you know, which I'm not going to play now, but I'm just going to set that Benny Goodman Trio mood. In 1978 or 7 or something, in the late 1970s, and I'll play a little Moonglow. It must have been Moonglow. Oh boy, did we have some wonderful Moonglow 2 nights ago with that super moon, pink moon, which is not pink, that's a seasonal color distinction. But yeah, Moonglow is the best. The tune too. So Joe Paul and I go to this amateur night. Just out of nowhere we show up, and it helped that the celebrity host was a fan of the big bands. He was a radio disc jockey, and he did contemporary stuff, or contemporary for the time. But I think he was like an ex-big band trumpet player or something. So he gravitated to what we did, and we won. So yay! And so after we won, then we learned we had to come back next week, because we had come during the last week of the 13-week series. So all the other 12 winners were already just sitting waiting to come back the next week. We won that last one. We come back the next week and we win again. And I'm not sure we made people happy, but that's just how it happened. But the relevant thing about that is, in that second week, the fellow who owned that Fender Rhodes, who brought it in there every week to be the accompanist for the acts, because most of them were singers and needed a piano player, and that was his gig. He pulled me aside, and he said, I've been needing to stop doing this, and I let the agency know, and they can't find a replacement for me. You want the gig? And I'm like, blink, blink, blink. But another recurring theme in stories that I've already told, this one, and in stories that I'll tell in the future, is when an opportunity comes that you have the potential of learning something, you take that opportunity. Okay? As long as it's realistic and you think you can do it, and I felt I could do it. And, I mean, I was already a church organist at the time, and doing, I could accompany. So I said, yeah. Now I don't know if it was a 1 week lull or if I showed up the next week, but I kind of think I showed up the next week, and all of a sudden now it was my gig. So I was in the position of this guy, and I think the celebrity host guy, I'm going to not say his name. I've said his name to people who I tell the story to in person, but since not everything I say would be flattering, I'm not going to say anything. So, now, is it crazy that I'm like 18 years old now and this accompanist? No. People who, are in music typically start at an early age. And like I said, Buddy Rich was performing in vaudeville when he was 3, I think. So actually, I was way behind getting that gig. Not that I hadn't had gigs before, but you know what I mean. So, boy, did I get an education immediately that I didn't see coming. And it happened the first week and every week thereafter. So what would happen is that a singer would come in, and typically amateurs, hence amateur night, but not necessarily. It wasn't restricted. And a lot of times, if they had music, the key that they could sing it in was not the key of the music. Now, depending on who your accompanist is, that could be a problem. Right? It's like, oh, the music has to be in your key. Go get music in your key. But, I mean, I had the ability to figure it out, to do what they call transpose. And so I would get things going, in that rehearsal before. I got there like an hour and a half early or 2 hours early. And so for the hour before, we're just going over keys and how the arrangements are going to be, and people come up off mic, one at a time, and just and talk with me. And we set up all the keys. And what I learned was that when particularly amateur singers get nervous, when you get nervous, things kind of get faster and higher. Yeah, and it's like the balloon is sailing away, and how do you get it back, kind of thing. So let that sit for a minute, and I'm going to demonstrate a non-panic driven follow the singer wherever they're going off a cliff example of transposing. Or playing something in a different key. And in my world, I mean, we all have to have transposing skills. I don't have super comprehensive great skills. Like there are some keys, I can play on all 12, but I'm not really well practiced in some of them. Now, Dave McKenna, one of my absolute heroes, man, it does not matter what key he's playing in, and he'll oftentimes cycle a tune through different keys, and he'll touch some of the keys that I tend not to touch in public. At Christmas time, I'll go ahead and I'll do the 12 Days of Christmas in 12 keys because it's cute, but I mean, you know, nothing sophisticated. But here's an example. Let me play Someone to Watch Over Me. I'll just play the chorus. I'm going to play it in the standard key, which is probably the key Gershwin wrote it in, and it's a good key to play it instrumentally, E flat. Okay, if that's the key I usually play it in, I'm in trouble, because that was played like I was transposing to a key I don't like. But anyway, so singers have different ranges, and often female singers wind up pitching a tune down. Not all of them. So, like, I could have played As Time Goes By and probably played it better. And I was thinking of one particular singer, Paula Johns, in Philadelphia, great singer. And if there's such a thing as stock female vocalist keys, she sings in them. So, okay, let me play a little bit of As Time Goes By since I butchered Someone to Watch Over Me. That's also an E flat, right? And I believe Paula's key for both tunes, whatever one I played that I forgot already, Someone to Watch Over Me or As Time Goes By, stock keys are E flat. She sings both, I'm pretty sure, in B flat, because I've played both behind her. So right away, the melody is either higher or lower. And it's not a really good key for piano, but that makes no difference if the voice is singing it. That's their range. Oh yeah, I'm a mess. Alright, and you can hear that sounds lower, right? And maybe not even as good as an E flat. But of course, if somebody's singing, I'm not playing the melody anyway. So the idea of like anything can be in any key, particularly for singers, that's just a thing. And so that I knew going in. But what I didn't know going in was that we would get to the performance. I play an intro, you know, I play the intro in B flat. And then they're going to go ahead and sing it in E. Of course, they don't know they're in E, and at first I don't know they're in E. And if you're a musician, you'll notice that I picked the key a tritone away, which is what often happens, as far away as you can get, right? And so the tune is started, and what do? Well, nobody gave me a textbook to say, what do you do when the amateur singer gets nervous and sings too high? Well, you know, I never questioned this until recently, that I actually had choices. And those choices were dictated by my temperament. And by making those choices kind of instinctively or intuitively or just second nature or whatever, it's just what I did, how I responded, that gave me insight into who I am and what I'm doing as a musician. And I'm sure, in fact I'm positive, and I know some, that there are some pianists who, if the person comes into the wrong key, they'll either just keep playing in what's supposed to be the correct key and let the person be out there and have this tension all the way through, or I can think of one who would probably stop the person and say, no, 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 that's not how we rehearsed it. That's just no, right? And the thought never, ever occurred to me to do that to the person performing, because even then I understood what, you know, is really true now, that it's that person's moment who's performing, and it's my job to make it work for them as much as possible. And I don't see how you put somebody in a good space by making them stop, embarrassing them in front of people, and then making them start over. So what I instinctively did, the first time it happened, it was like, oh, where are they? And I would find them. I'd always find them. You know, it first took me, you know, not forever, but too long, what I did. And then once I found them and they heard me matching them, they stayed there, right? I don't think I ever had to like keep chasing people who kept moving the targets. If I did, it was seldom, or moving the goalpost. It was just that initial nervousness, always higher, and you know, it happened dozens, if not hundreds of times. And yeah. So these are the notes I made to say about that. It was their performance, not mine. And I was already intuitively learning what it took me many years to put words to. That at heart, I'm an accompanist. I love accompanying. You know, I have to play instrumental music and play solo, and I enjoy doing that. But I am most comfortable when I can be connected to another musician and supporting what they do. And I wasn't cognizant that I was learning that about myself, but going back and looking at it, absolutely. Now, I have to tell you one really funny moment. And this is jokes a bit inside, in that you have to know just a little bit about music theory to get the joke. So you musicians out there, you'll get a good laugh if you haven't heard me tell this. And incidentally, this person that I'm going to describe, the song she sang that day, and maybe it's because of what I'm going to tell you, is the only song I actually remember what it was that I played when I accompanied somebody. It was so long ago, I don't know what tunes they played, I don't know what they did. I remember Secondhand Rose. So I'm going to play that in honor of the amateur night. But the funny thing was, and she was an amateur singer, but she took voice lessons. And she said, well, my voice teacher said that you should take it down a third, but you can just take it down a quarter if it's easier. You get it? There ain't no such thing as a quarter interval, but there is a third. All right, so that is a fun part of my memory of Amateur Night at the Crazy Horse. And as you can tell, I'm not used to playing the melody of that tune, which you shouldn't play when you're accompanying. And I don't think I've ever had reason to play that tune since 1978 or 9 or whenever it was. All right, so as you can imagine, having that experience on the stage for a year and a half, dealing with a host that would raise your blood pressure continually, and all the different acts and all the different things, and having to play solo as well for part of the evening, you know, you're going to come out of that situation a whole lot stronger than you went in. Yeah, the stage is our school, and you know, you can anecdotally give so many examples, and these ones that I'm pulling out of a hat are just opportunities to share some of these experiences with you, because you know, every gig is school. And when you have something like that when you're younger, that's super cool. My friend Cody Level, I've talked about him. He was in his early 20s, and he's out on the road full time for the better part of 5 years with the Glenn Miller Orchestra. He came back to Rehoboth, a different musician, a more seasoned musician with much more experience. He learned a lot on the road. And of course he also practiced, but you know, we all wouldn't be where we are without our experiences. So that was early in life. I want to share now more of a last decade thing. And those who live in my area, which is the upper mid eastern shore of Maryland, kind of the town of Chestertown is our center of gravity. It's a very rural area, but a very art-centered county seat. And we are right across the bay from Baltimore. If you could throw a rock, you know, maybe 18 miles, you could stand on one side of the bay and, you know, put a window out in the building over on the other side, somewhere in the vicinity of Baltimore. But just because you can do that doesn't mean you can get there, you know. I was in Baltimore this afternoon. It's a solid hour and a half without traffic. So we're a rural area, but if you live here, then there's one event that happened every year. It's a big fundraiser. It became one of the big kind of cultural happenings. It was a fundraiser for essentially a women's health clinic and a doctor who provided free medical services. And it kind of evolved from there. It was called Women Helping Women. Women Helping Women. And for the last half or so of the 15-year run of that, and the last show was actually this year. We got it in like a week before COVID hit and quarantined us all. We were very grateful. For the second half of that 15 years or so, I was musical director every year. Before that, I did it roughly every other year. And that event was different than the amateur night, because what they had was every female professional or quality amateur, you know, performer who would come, and they would donate their time, and everybody. It was just a community. And a lot of times when you're doing things in music, and I learned this about theater people for sure, when you do shows, it just becomes, it's a group effort, it's a community thing. And the town really supported this event, and it would sell out every year, and people would be talking about it for weeks afterward. You know, if one of the ladies, you know, hit out of the park, and every year some of them would, you know, it would be the talk on the street for weeks. It was a cool thing. So it wasn't an amateur night; it was a professional show, right? And as it evolved, these, you know, 15, 20, sometimes more performers, at first, when we started it in, what year would it have been? Whatever, 15 years before 1996, you know, I think it was still kind of a standards Great American Songbook center of gravity, and there are a few people doing contemporary stuff, and of course that's changed over the last 15 years, and you had, you know, 4 minutes. The performer would come up, and I would need to find that zone. And what I was able to learn about myself was that I am, you know, connection driven, And if I'm with somebody in their space, I can be there to support them and hold hands with them. And if 3 minutes later I'm in someone else's space, and it's completely different, I'll be able to do that too. Uh, but uh, and I guess now that I'm thinking about it, one important part of that gig was that it paved the way for something that followed. Uh, but the one thing that it did too is that it put a lot more contemporary music in front of me. And as you know, that's a little different now, but typically not a place I'd ever live if I didn't have to play the tune. You know, and still when I'm listening to recordings here, I'm listening to more classic jazz, not necessarily Benny Goodman, you know, like Bill Evans and uh, people of that ilk. But what you learn by being on the stage with, I've never actually said this in public. I might get in trouble, right? But I've said this in private to people, so I'm going to say it. It's over. What can they do to me? I'll never be on a stage in my life where there's so much diva juice in one place. You know, because we had 15, 20 female performers, a few men occasionally, and these are people like doing their thing, right? And it was just all this energy. And where was I ever going to experience that on the stage, right? So, in the spirit of saying, I had a lot more contemporary tunes put in front of me. I'm going to play one. I mean, it's 80s, and this one I played before anywhere, or did play, but it kind of also describes my role, and was a role I was happy to assume, which was to be the support for the person out there getting all the love. I mean, I would get my love too, and you know, life is an accompanist. That's another hobby. But anyway, here we go. You are the wind beneath my wings. So, drifting a little bit from the center of gravity of the topic, but to set this up, my doing that gig, learning about myself, as I said, but also solidifying my reputation to be able to do that. You know, to kind of be the guy, you know, who could go where he needs to go, and be an accompanist who doesn't get in the way, and all of that. When the Mainstay in 2016 got a new director, he was only here for 18 months because he had personal reasons that were unforeseen that he had to leave and go back to the Midwest. But I'd spoken with him when he first came and encouraged him to take in a few experiences to get to know the community and the arts people and the dynamic, and attending that show was one of them. And I didn't give any thought to it. You know, I didn't suggest that for any self-serving reasons. That was just what I'd call the biggest group hug, the biggest annual group hug in Chestertown. It was a thing. It really was a thing. And so he's there waiting for me when I walk off the stage. And he was only in town like 3 months by then, right? And he says to me, I want to talk to you about a steady gig at the Mainstay. And I just stared at him because the Mainstay, and you've heard me talk about it, you know, of course, is a venue that's 25 plus years running now. It's a very unique concert venue in an unlikely place, the Waterman's town of Rock Hall, Maryland, which is 20 minutes from where I live and 20 minutes or so from Chestertown as well. And what he was observing that night, multiple things, but including, you know, how I could find all those spaces and be those things, you know, got him to propose this concept where I would have an every week series, and it was supposed to be 15 weeks. Well, it was a trial period. And we didn't put that out that it was a trial period. We're just saying, okay, this summer, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, 15 weeks, we're going to have a concert every Monday night. Joe's going to have a guest, right? And what I did for those first shows was I reached out into my network of professional musicians from the Baltimore, D.C. area, from the Philadelphia area, and I brought in like one of everything, you know, guitar player, trumpet player, vise player, this or that, you know, and had a variety of shows, you know, doing kind of, you know, what I wanted to do, and there were one or two local artists that I included who were really good players, and one was a violinist violist named Nevin. And I put him at the very last week. Okay, this is going to be a long, involved story here, but hang in with me. I'll do my best. And by the time we got to the Labor Day show, which was Nevin's, it was already established that we could continue. And it was soon thereafter that it was just open-ended. At first, I was extended for like, okay, book 3 more months, book 3 more months, go, you know. And we were 4 years in when the pandemic hit. We were going to make some changes. We had another year to go of doing it the way it was, and then we were going to make some changes. What we put out there for everyone was just a series was ending, and it kind of was, but not forever. But anyhow, so when I invited Nevin, he likes to go everywhere. He plays classical music, he'll play bluegrass, he'll play pop, he'll play rock, and the classical thing is what really made it difficult for me, because the straight reading is just, it's not my temperament. I mean, I have the training and all of that, but it's like, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to give Nevin this opportunity, okay? And that was the first kind of step toward me now taking the idea that the stage is school and making myself, creating opportunities for me to stretch in ways I never could or would be able to otherwise, while I'm also fulfilling the more important goal of having an increasing variety of people. So after a while of doing this, I was reaching into the local artist pool and then bringing in even more people from outside. But I set that up with Nevin because I'm going to come back to him. So the first summer I was doing this, we were probably like a month, 6 weeks in to the 15 weeks, and we've had an annual event here, a classical music event, fantastic event called the National Music Festival. I think it's been going on for 10 years. We lost it last year. It's coming back this year, and for a number of years, a wonderful classical soprano, Celine Mogilnicki, would come. And I was playing this piano bar gig at the time. It really wasn't a piano bar. It was like a cocktail hour room sort of thing, and people socialized. And it wasn't sitting actually around the piano spilling drinks on me and stuff. And when she was in town for that, she just wandered into the place, just kind of happenstance, and discovered there was music in the room off to the side, and came to check it out. And what she told me later was that one of the tunes I played, "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes," was something she sang in her senior recital at Juilliard. And so, as she afterward, I hung around and we talked for about an hour. And I'm always intrigued by building bridges, between things. Like not being tribal and being inclusive. I mean, what is jazz music but an amalgam of cultures? Although yes, it's black music. That's a whole nother discussion. But you basically have, European elements and all these things going on. So I'm all about that, and I'm realizing, that because Celine doesn't improvise or play jazz or sing jazz or anything like that. Although she sang "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes" at her senior recital, but we're talking, and I'm seeing the center of gravity in our thought process, right? Now, while I'm talking to her, all right, Nevin walks in down to the room because he figured he would drop off some music to me, and we are talking. Now, let me see. Do I have a file folder that has as much music as Nevin brought to me? Okay, this is a random file folder, and let's see what this is about. Yeah, this is what I made say one of these shows. It was a lot to do. So it's like, this. I mean, this was this much. He just plops it on me, and it's like, okay, Joe, here's what you have to work on. And it's like, really? And at that point, I think I had told Celine what I was doing. And I have this like, what have I done to myself? It's fine. It actually worked that well, and it was fun. So that put a seed in my head. So I made sure that I went to see Celine perform that year. And it was everything I expected it to be based on my conversation with her. So I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to work. I just know that we are two artists who can find a way to connect because ultimately we both do it from here, right? So my first push out to myself was to have Celine come and do a Mainstay Monday, and she did it 3 years running. She would have done it last year had the summer not been canceled. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get her again. Her circumstances is different. And each one that we did together, we found more and more of a zone. But my first big push out was basically to get the classical soprano in and figure out what to do. And then from that, it became I was going all over the place. I had a ballerina come in a couple of times, a friend that I made in another circumstance that we could do this free improvised stuff together, and yeah, she took that little small stage and did great with it. A bluegrass fiddler, I accompanied a poet, Celtic harpist, did a smooth jazz night, Linda Ronstadt tribute, all these things. And the one I've talked about, the two classical pianists, where among other things I had to work up that Rhapsody in Blue. You know, so it's like, I mean, the stage was school, and I was writing my own curriculum. You know, and of course some of those things maybe I would have done in my own discipline, but you know, no way. I mean, if you want to get something done, make it so you have to do it. Put it on the public calendar and sell tickets. You know, so I'm going to play one more tune, and it was going to be "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes" if there were two more tunes, but you know that tune. I'm going to suggest you look up a video, because I would post from about half the shows, a third to a half of the shows. Most of them I would video record, and I would post one tune or two to sort of archive the Mainstay Monday series. And there's a fiddle player, Nate Grower, like grower, you know, Grower. He's been David Bromberg's fiddle player for a long time, and he's also in a bluegrass-ish, but not, we'll call it bluegrass, that's regional, that is making some waves. They're doing some high and wides, right? When I offered him a Mainstay Monday, and he was happy to do it, he took it as school for himself, and said, okay, I've always wanted to like try to play some of the jazz stuff, and I really don't do it, and that's not his realm. But he picked a bunch of tunes that he was going to do, and he worked on them, and he took it. He played on my playbook, right? And there is a video on YouTube if you search "My Name, His Name." That'll be enough. There's a couple of videos, but the one I'm referencing is "Lady Be Good," an old, you know, Benny Goodman era jazz standard, and you can watch two musicians interacting that are coming from different places but meeting in a common place. And that was the thing with Celine. That was the thing with some of the other of the artists. And because the stage is school, I could write my curriculum. Yeah, I didn't really think about it that way until just now. Now, I'm only just scratching the surface, and I hope this was engaging. But you know, it's ultimately a fulfilling life we musicians lead, and it makes no sense at all. So let me just play "Lady Be Good," and then you can go on YouTube and watch Nate and I do it. this was engaging, and thank you for those of you who support me. I'll ask your consideration. If that's something you haven't thought of, the Patreon would be more applicable if you watch regularly. Speaking of watching, the live stream from Sunday night with Beth McDonald and Scott Silbert will remain available on the Blue House Productions YouTube page. That stays there. Unfortunately, the stream with Sharon Sable for the Blossom Dairy project was a streaming pass stream, and after so many days it expired. So that's not available to watch, but Sharon and I will be doing other things. And catch the Showbridge Friday night. Our set is at 6 p.m. And thanks so much. I'll see you next week, and I'll take a look at this and see if I made any sense at all.